Yeah, so what I wanted to do today is kind of go through and discuss kind of how um, we do, or I do, like when we come across a property and we've done some searches, we've worked with some clients, some buyers, and we've identified a buyer, or not a buyer, but a house that we would like to put an offer in on. What are the next steps, and where do we go from there? How do we do a CMA and put in an offer on a property? So
Awesome.
um, Jeff, and Sydney, anyone that's on, just jump in if you have any suggestions or thoughts as I'm rolling through it. So please interrupt me, Jeff, at any time. But does anybody have any suggestions of is anybody looking at any properties right now, or would like to do a CMA on a specific property that's listed, obviously?
Welcome back, Brianna.
Hi, Brianna.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, Brianna. Are you listening on
How's
your
it
phone
going?
or are you watching?
I'm listening on my phone, but I can still see ya.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome back.
She just got back
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Just got back from where?
I said you just got back this morning, right?
Yes, yes. I know. Yep.
Okay, just a reminder, you guys, before I get started, I sent you a text. I'm sure you got that, but I want as many of our team to be at Twigs for happy hour tomorrow, 4 p.m. as possible. I went to the Christmas party thing they had, and there was a few people there, but it was pretty low key, kind of humdrum. I want them to show that Utah's changing. So let's fill the room.
Yeah, that would be so awesome. I love
Right.
that.
Okay, sorry, go
And
ahead.
it's a good time too. So well, maybe I'll just pick a spot. Let's see. Any suggestions, Jeff?
You're gonna pick the property to actually comp?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I guess I just should have planned. Neither one of us had time to plan much for this, but we do it all the time, so we can pull it off, but,
You
no.
want to just comp
Anybody
my
working on the
house?
deal? Go ahead, Kim, what? Sorry.
Do you want to just comp my house?
Let's do one that's listed so we can pull up that information as if we're going to put an offer in on it. Does anybody have a property they're looking to put an offer in on, possibly?
I have one that's under contract right now. We can
Okay.
do if you guys want to. Let me look up the address really quick.
Perfect.
Is this your buyer, Brianna?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's kind of
Uh,
nice to pick a property that's actually in play, make it.
that's listed. Yeah. Let me see here. It is. Dang it. Okay, 360 North, 800 East in Spanish Fork.
Is that the one?
You're not
Yeah.
sharing yet, Eric?
Oh, I'm not sharing, am I?
No.
It's just a small, like, white brick rambler.
Hey, as he's pulling that up,
There you go. Yep,
keep
that's the
in
one.
mind, perfect. Keep in mind that there's a couple of different reasons, and we'll try and like converse on both ways. Obviously, this one's a buyer scenario, but you need to run comps for your listings too, right? You need to help them determine a base of value for a listing price, and then also an offer price for your buyer. So Eric, let's kind of like go back and forth maybe, unless you wanted to do one and then the other, but kind of both scenarios on how we would present that to our clients too, because it's our job to help them.
No, I think that's great. So that's a good point, because when I'm doing comps on a potential listing, I try to get the highest and the lowest end range, because if I haven't seen the house, obviously I have no idea what condition it's in. So if I'm doing something, doing a CMA on a house that I haven't been in and it's a potential listing, it's a really wide range. But in this case, we've already seen the house, we've walked through it, we know what kind of condition it's in. And so we're really trying to pinpoint an offer price. So have you been in this one, Brianna?
He's on-
I gotta unmute myself, sorry. Yes, yep, I have been in that one.
So is this one that you have under contract yourself?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Nice. Perfect. Finished basement. Looks like it's been remodeled.
Yeah, I think it must have been a flip home because everything's completely remodeled and the person hadn't lived in there before.
Okay. So the first thing I always do is I'm going to click on these two boxes right here, tax ID and history. A little bit of dive in too much into trying to figure out the comp. I kind of want to look at the history of it. So reading the comments, nicely remodeled, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 0.3 lot, membrane roof, new paint inside, new flooring, new water heater. So it looks like they've gone through and pretty much done everything. Is it kind of upstairs and downstairs? Is that right? That they've remodeled?
Yeah, uh-huh, yep, they've remodeled the whole thing.
So this history, a lot of times, will tell us a lot. So you can see that, you know, on the left, you've got your MLS numbers, and these are all in chronological order. So you can see how old a listing is based on the MLS number. And each MLS number that's different is a different listing. Sometimes it could be an expired listing, or it could be a few years apart. Like this one, 2005 to 2016 to 2019 to 2020. So this most recent one, notice it actually sold May 28th of 2019. So that's less than a year ago that it sold. So I'm going to check out that listing just to kind of see what kind of history that we've had on it. So it sold for cash in 5 days for $245,000. Interesting that it's been off the market for a year because they probably, didn't buy it and then just looked to flip it immediately. But you can see the old photos from the previous listing a year ago. So I just like to compare and see what they've done and compare them side by side. Here's one little trick if you guys don't know. This is kind of new on the MLS the last, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months. They've got this new tab button up here on the right. If you click on that, you can click on that anytime, even inside of a contract, and it'll completely duplicate that page. So you can actually compare properties or compare photos. So right now I'm actually on the under contract listing. I'm just gonna kind of look through some of these photos. I saw a basement photo versus the old basement photo. Kind of a dramatic difference there. So I'm just kind of getting some history on what's gone on in this home. So they've definitely fixed up some things, looking to, turn it probably on a profit, right?
Let's be honest though, right there. Look at those two pictures. The fireplace is the same. There's carpet and trim and paint. That's the only difference between those two. They still got the same old wood burner in there.
That's true.
So that's why I said, let's talk about the listing and let's talk about the buyer side on the comps, because this is important for you to really pay attention to, because that is not a very expensive finish on the basement. So if you were listing that previous property, wouldn't you want to have a talk with your client on possibly making it look like photo number 2 versus photo number 1? You're not talking about a lot of money right there, but look at the perceived value from those two pictures.
Yeah, the carpet,
Yeah.
technically 3-tone paint, right? and they replaced the lighting as well. Just got rid of the basement chandeliers. You don't see that very often. Basement chandeliers. Nice. I don't know what's going on in the corner over here. If we've got some kind of, almost looks like a mold, but I can't tell, obviously. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's hard to tell from that
hard to
picture.
tell.
And I have seen a chandelier in a bathroom before, so I will.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's got some ugliness to it for sure. But this is the old listing we're still looking at. So that's just kind of a brief history. I want to look at that kitchen again. How much did they do this kitchen, Jeff?
Hopefully they at least cleaned it.
So that's the old one. That's the new one. Not seeing a whole lot of change in here.
No.
So it was about a year ago.
Again, the light fixture and some paint.
Yeah, exactly. So possibly the person that purchased it, we don't know, could have even been, you know, just an investor or an agent even. So okay, well let's jump into this. Now we kind of know the history of what's going on with it. I just like to know. One other thing too, you can always click on the tax ID and it'll open up and you can you can have access to all the county links if you want to get really detailed information on the property. And all the MLS history is right here, so you can pull up all the MLS data. It's kind of convenient just to hit that tax ID number. Okay, so after I kind of look at the history and get a little bit of a feel for it, I'm going to do just kind of a little address look to just kind of see where we are in Spanish Fork. Kind of right smack in the middle. So we should have a pretty good, you know, we should have some pretty good comps around here. Notice, Jeff, this is one thing that I always look at right here is kind of where it is in the quadrants too.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to be looking in the northeast quadrant, or if it's really close to an intersection, if I have to look in north-south or, you know, east-west. So just to kind of give myself a little bit of a box in here. And what I'll do is start working on some comps on this property. So I'm going to look for in I'm going to do a full residential search. And the first place I'm going to just start out is I'm going to put in just the city of Spanish Fork. You can actually type it in and it'll pull up. Makes it a little bit easier. And I usually start out with backup, under contract, and solds, and remove the active, just so I can kind of get a gauge of what's going on, not just what's sold. I'm not going to use necessarily those in a comp situation. But I want to know what's out there and what's available. So then I start getting a little bit more narrow. The MLS, when you do the solds, it automatically defaults you back 1 year. I like to start out about 6 months back. I don't know what you usually do, Jeff, but I'll just kind of come back to about August 1st. Like right now, that's a little more than 6 months, because appraisers like to use properties that are, you know, as recent as possible.
So based on that, Eric, I usually don't go back the full 6 month, because if I'm just putting in an offer, that appraisal might be not be done for a few weeks, right? So I'll go at most 150 days, and you can also put in the number of days back if you're, or you can click on the calendar like Eric's.
Yeah.
But I'll go 150 days to kind of show what the appraiser is going to see, because I might have a really good comp at like 179 days from now, but by the time the appraisal is being ordered, it might be invisible to him. And I was relying on that data as I was doing my comparative analysis for my buyer to put in an offer, and it may be higher or lower, you know, so keep that in mind.
Yep. Good point. So now let's get a little bit more detailed on the actual property. So this is a Rambler Ranch property, single family. Definitely want to start there because appraisers won't take a two-story and compare it with a Rambler unless it's way out in the middle of nowhere and there's just nothing else they can compare it to. That just doesn't happen around here. So always use the same style of home. And then I go to square footage, Jeff. I like to kind of narrow in on the square footage. So we're at 2,400. I'm just going to do a wide range. The idea is to get down, for me, I like to be somewhere under 20 properties. And what other criteria that I really have to change. I'm going to go 2,200 to 2,900 just to see where that brings me down to. So you can see that my matches are dropping down here, are down to 41. So now there's 41 properties that fit this criteria, back up under contract, sold, Spanish Fork, 150 days back Ramblers with that square footage. And then we have a 0-car garage and it's built in 61. So depending on the neighborhood and where we're at, I don't want to use any comps that are brand new. So I will put a cap on the year, just as I'm narrowing it down so I don't get any new properties. And sometimes it doesn't make any difference. Look, that took off 2 properties. So that's hardly any. So now that we've got that narrowed in, I want to get a little bit closer on our actual location. So I'm going to view these results. We can always come back to these 39. I just want to take a look at the map and where all these properties are. I don't work in Spanish Fork as much as I do in Salt Lake County. So I just want to take a look at where we're at. So all of these properties are considered in Spanish Fork. And remember, we can just click on the map on the other property and kind of see where we're at and narrow it in a little bit. We got a pretty wide range of properties, so I want to narrow that down to be a little bit closer. So I'm going to go back to refine search. I didn't want to do that. We're going to click on single family on your property type 2. There's probably not a ton of, there was probably 1 condo or twin home in that area. So now we're in a northeast southwest quadrant. I'm going to narrow that down by taking this 360 north and 800 east. Let's just look in the northeast quadrant and see how much that narrows down our field here. So now we're only looking at properties in that northeast quadrant. I'm going to view these results and just kind of look at the map again.
So another thing to look at while Eric's pulling up this map, you can see there's some pretty major corridor streets right there. So as you're looking at, even though they're close in address and proximity, a lot of times the neighborhoods and the value change. Like Highway 6 right there, you're talking about on the east or the west side of Highway 6, those are completely different developments. And so knowing that, it might be wise, and you can see where the consolidation of the homes are, and they're pretty close to the subject. But then you got those stragglers out there over on the other side. So you can actually, instead of just do the northeast quadrant, if it makes more sense, you can go to the map search and just quadrant off and draw a line right around those neighborhoods you want. Or are you removing that, right? Did I see?
That's usually what I do, is just remove listing and this one.
There you go.
So now I'm down to 6 that are pretty close to my property. And that's kind of where I want to start, just to see what kind of results I get from those. And 6 is a pretty tight number. I'm fine if I'm down to like 10 or 15, because I'll even start there. So now I'm going to come back to my agent full report and take a look at these 6 properties and kind of see what price ranges we're in.
And I think you still have some under contracts on there too.
Oh, I do, huh?
Yeah. That's all right. You can still scroll through them. Some of them are sold. I think there was 4 sold and 2 under contract. So the under contracts are important to look at as well. I'll do separate searches. I might do the sold search and then get a good feel on what's already closed. And then I'll pull in the backups and under contract, because it may have already been under contract for 3 weeks and it's going to close like next week. So it's going to become a comp. So next time that search parameter is done by the appraiser, that one's going to show up as a sold. So that's why Eric has those, because it may not be a sold right now while you're doing your search, but it's certainly going to play a factor for your buyer.
Yeah, like this property right here has a list price of $339. It's under contract. It was on the market just a short time. It just came on the market a couple weeks ago, and it's pretty close in square footage. It does have a 2-car garage, so that's going to affect it, but pretty close in square footage and also year built. So that's possibly a pretty good comp once it closes. This one as well. This one's got a 2-car garage. I think the subject doesn't have a garage. Is that right?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't. No garage.
Okay.
So there's different ways to do this. If you got too many comps, obviously you'd want to just look at the ones that don't have garage. Like if Eric had done this search parameter in that tight time frame and he still had 18 properties, then he's going to want to narrow it down a little bit further. But where you've only got 6, an appraiser is going to put a little bit more weight on location and proximity to the subject than whether or not it's got a 1 or a 2-car garage. That usually will trump their decision making. So if they're looking for one that specifically has no garage and it's a half a mile away, it's not going to be as comparable, and they're going to make an adjustment based on the garage. So keep that in mind, that you kind of have to toggle back and forth sometime and find the best selection of what's closest and most like the property.
So I have a comment too. So not all people know what the effective year built is. And so I just want to point that out, that if they've updated the plumbing, the electrical, they can now do an effective year built. So this isn't built in 1961. Well, they updated those things. So the effective year is really 2019.
Well, and that's exactly correct, Kim, but keep in mind that is an agent input. That's not
Seller disclosure.
yeah, that's not a status thing. They're saying, hey, we just remodeled this year, so it's as if it's in as good a condition as if it was built in 2019. Now that would have to have plumbing, that would have to have new electrical, like a new build for it truly to be like a 2019. Carpet, paint, cleaning up, and a new roof does not substantially make it the same as if it was just built this year. So they're trying to market the property that way, but you need to use your own judgment and not compare that necessarily to new builds that are only 1 year old, because there's a lot of other factors that come into play on a new construction that new from 1961 to 2019. I would say if you did a substantial remodel in 2019, it's certainly going to bring that 1961 up, effective year up, but I wouldn't have put it all the way up to 2019 in this case.
Yep, that's one thing. That's a really good point to always remember what's on the bottom of this MLS right here. Information not guaranteed, buyer to verify information. The MLS is really a advertisement tool. It's not a guaranteed tool. Or
Right.
guaranteed.
Thanks for covering that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point though, Kim.
I've seen, Jeff, I'm sure you've seen it too, where agents will actually put in the contract per MLS 165, and actually drop that in the contract. And that brings the MLS sheet and what they're putting on the MLS into it. I've seen that a few times because it really is an advertisement. is all
Right.
it is, and nothing's guaranteed. But so this is a good example, because I like this looking at this house, because what I'm doing is I'm really looking for the right amount of properties, and if I'm not happy with what I'm getting out of it, I can adjust these search criteria to maybe either show me less or more. And we've got some good ones in here, but the one thing that I could back off a little bit is I'm just kind of curious. What if there's a house in there that's at 2150 square feet? Because I put in 2200 square feet as a minimum, remember? So just to see, I'm just going to go back into my search, because you can refine this and tighten it or loosen it as you need to. And I'm just going to take a look at more square footage. Sorry, my internet's a little choppy, so it's skipping on me a little bit. I'm just going to drop this down to 2000. And I'm going to leave the 29. I'm just see if I get any more. So I got a few extra properties. And I'm going to go ahead and drop off these backup and under contracts. I'll probably put those back in. But I want to see these 7 solds real quick. See if that changed anything on the properties I'm looking at. So now I've got one. This is, I mean, it's right at 2,000 square feet, 2052. But it doesn't have a garage. So this one might be a little, more attractive comp for, for an appraiser to look at. And appraisers usually, if they have 3 properties, they like to have at least one property on either side of the square footage. So if you have a home that's 2,500 square foot, they don't want to use all 3 of their properties over 2,500. They like to have one that's under and 2 that are above, or vice versa. And most people think that you got to have 3 properties to do, an appraisal. You can have more than 3 properties. They can pull 4 or 5 properties if they want. So let's see.
Appraisals with at least 5, and then they're identifying the ones they're putting the most weight on and why. A lot of mine I'm seeing at least 5.
Yeah. So this one, garage 0, and that one's 2,800 square feet. Also no garage, 2,300 square feet on this one. So kind of what I'm looking for is I'm just looking for some of those stats, like the year built, the garage, the acreage size, square footage, and then also the basement finished. A lot of times in these older homes, you're going to have more homes that have finished basements. So you want to pay attention to it in any year built, but you'll notice on newer construction homes, you'll have half of them with finished basements, half of them that don't. So you want to pay attention to that. So here's a newer home. Remember I put that cap on the year built. So here I got a newer one that sold for $295 with a lower square footage. Probably not the best comp for the house that we're looking at. Any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, if is that much newer, but all the rest of them are similar age build. Again, like what Kim brought up, the effective year built comes into play. So what we haven't done yet, and if you really want to drill down to condition and making it comparable, you'd literally have to look at the pictures on the inside of these and look at the remarks, because this one built in 1974 obviously is more comparable construction wise to the subject property, but I don't know what the inside looks like yet, right?
Right.
So we haven't even got to that point yet. So it depends. I'd leave it on there for now as we kind of get that range. And again, a valuation is not a science. There isn't a number Eric's going to land on. Before he's seen the house, like he said, it's going to be a much broader range of high and low. As we drill down, it's still going to be a high and low, and we want to be in the ballpark. And then Brianna, I'm sure, had the conversation with her clients on scarcity, availability, the market conditions, those kind of intangibles we're not talking about right now, but they come into play when you land on an offer price. So this part of it, you're just trying to you got to kind of do it twice, right? You're looking at from an eyes of a buyer or a seller, and then you also have to look from the eyes of an appraiser, because the appraiser has to agree with all those other assumptions you're making. So that's why Eric's starting here, is because if we're under contract, this is the next person that's going to value that property based on this kind of information. So they're different but similar. Okay.
You notice too, all of these homes are on the market for a very short time. You've got, 15 days. That one's 74. Most of them are really on the market for just a short period of time. So they are moving pretty quickly. Here's a newer home too. That one's 2015. But notice the sold price. I'm just going to remove that one. It doesn't really fit into what we're looking at. So I've got 6 right now. So I'm just going to jump in, and I'm just going to do just a quick CMA on paper, just to give us that high-low range. And what I do is I just hit the reports over here and hit CMA report. And then I go back and I grab my MLS number of my subject property, copy that, and I'm going to hit this populate subject data and drop that MLS number in. And it's going to pre-populate that field for me. And what this form is really doing, what it's doing is it's creating additions and subtractions for each of the criteria of your subject property and comparing it to one other property. So when you notice this, our subject property has 4 bedrooms. This one has 4 bedrooms. So there's no amount right here. That means there's no additions or subtractions, obviously. When you have 2 baths on this one and only 1 on the subject bath, then you're getting a $500 or $5,000 addition on this property. So when we look at what the property values are, these property values on this property is, if you compare the subject property that we're looking at, 360 North, 800 East, and we compare it only to 791, 500 East, it factors in all these additions and subtractions, and it gives us this number compared to this house. Is that how you understand, explain that, Jeff?
Yeah. So you're looking at 6 different comps there, and this is kind of showing you your range that Eric was talking about. So it could appraise, as you can see just on this page, anywhere between the 289 and 312. I don't know what the other ones are down below there. So that's kind of what this is doing. This is just kind of a quick look. Like I said, it's not science. It's going to kind of give you the ballpark. It's going to give you the average. As the appraiser looks at the house and looks at the condition, there are adjustments for a lot of things on an appraisal that aren't on this. So if you have a deal and you have an appraisal in your file, I encourage you to kind of study it and kind of just look through it and look at the remarks, look at the subjective opinion of value that the appraiser has given the one you're looking at, because this is by no means all inclusive, but it gives you a very, very good start point. Look at that. All of these right here, 0-car garage, except for the one has a 1-car garage. You can't build a 1-car garage for $1,000.
That's a carport. That one's actually a carport.
Oh, that one says carport. Well, garage is usually what, $5,000 for a stall.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It cost me almost that to close in a carport and make it a garage. But anyway, yeah, Eric, that's kind of what I do. I kind of look at compare this one to that one, this one to that one, just on what that is.
Yeah. So if we were just to put this one property in, that was the only one that we had, and we're only comparing these 2, this number would be 289,752. This number would also be that exact same number. So what it does is it takes all 6 of these properties compared to each other and gives you an average. So 6 is actually a pretty decent number to look at. But so what is your low here? We've got our low is 286 and our high is 318. So keep in mind that this property that's given a 318 value, it's hitting our property $10,000 because it does not have a 2-car garage. So it's putting that into effect in that number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, That makes sense.
So what I'd want to do is I don't want to look at, you know, this is your highest comp. So let's look at this house and kind of compare like our condition. Now this is sold, so we can't actually go inside it, but because we have access to the MLS, we can kind of look at condition. There's your 2-car garage. That's a beauty.
Looks like a extra wide one to me.
Yeah, it looks like a work shed, right? This is pretty standard finishing with some nice staging, and it looks like they replaced the floor.
Look at what that staging does though, right? I mean, they got white on white walls, which is kind of coming back. It's kind of like hospital look to me, but versus a vacant room, the one that Brianna put the offer on was vacant. Your eyes go to this furniture, right? And it's like, it looks nice. If that was an empty shell of a box of a room, there would be nothing to look at but that fan.
And the fan's older.
Yeah.
So you'd notice the floor and kind of a, boring room. That staging makes a huge difference. I picked a good one. So why did it sell for more? Partly because of the staging. You better believe it, right?
What did this one sell for?
This one sold for,
So it didn't sell for more.
oh, it didn't sell for more. It's just given us a higher value on it. So this one was 302. This one was a 325. So it gives us a higher value compared to the other one. So,
Hey Eric, while we're on here, before we move away from scroll up so you can see the quick CMA value.
this one here.
No, over on the left-hand side, the whole page, over underneath where it says search criteria. Keep your page, scroll, scroll the whole thing up.
Sorry.
Not where I'm looking at the comps, but over on your whole page. So can't you scroll the left-hand side where it says search criteria? Can't you pull that bottom of that page up?
No, that's it.
You don't have a scroll bar on there? So, okay, scroll to the bottom of the page with the comps on it. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. It came up as soon as you got to the bottom. See where it says subject range, sold, and total? Now, Eric, if you go back to refine your search criteria and you put in active, and this is something I do, you put in active and under contract and pull those in, and then you still do this same CMA, on the bottom of that left-hand side, it's going to show active value based on comps, under contract, CMA, sold CMA. Right now, Eric's just looking at sold, so on that list. In this type of market, that kind of gives you an indication, and Eric would have gone back and changed the under contracts and so pulled them in. I like to look at them all in this one report and not always flip back and forth. So if he pulls all these in, it's going to actually give you a value for each status.
Do you ever look at the active in this status?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. Well, this is for value for the buyer, but we're talking about, let's say Brianna's at the stage where her client liked this property. You also are comparing it with what their other choices are, in my opinion. So now we're looking at comps. Sometimes I find another house that my client would like better by doing this, because I didn't see that other active and the value of that for my client a little bit better. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's including all of these prices. See now how it says active, under contract, sold, and total. Not a big difference on this particular house, but sometimes there's a pretty big sway in those numbers in a trendy market like this. And I like to see that one. This one isn't giving us a whole lot of different data to make a different decision, but I like to see that because that's trends. If the under contracts and actives are lower or higher than my subject property on the sold comps.
Yep, that makes sense. And when you're doing a CMA, on a listing, obviously you're looking at all of your competition as well. Not just what's sold and under contract, but you want to know what your competition is. So you're looking at all your actives after you work on determining a value.
Yeah, for sure. Like when you list a new property, you're going to either help sell the listings that are already on the market, or they're going to help you sell yours. So you need to know where you're going to fall on that. So you can take those back out, Eric. Sorry, I just wanted to see the difference. It's not that drastic based on the search criteria we have in here.
No, that's good. I like that. So, Bree, do you have any questions on kind of what we're looking at? Are these some of the same comps that you looked at as well?
Yeah, it's really similar. I look a lot at the price per square foot also, which I don't know if that, I noticed a lot of those were like 130 a square foot, which this one was listed at 131, and we put in an offer for 5,000 less. So it ended up being like 129 a square foot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's right around where we were.
The price per square foot is a good gauge for you, but keep in mind the intangibles that doesn't consider, like a garage, for instance. It's going
Right.
up the footage of the house. So it's a good comparison to see where you fall, but it's not as specific as breaking it down a little bit further.
Doing this, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing on that too, and it doesn't really pop up in these homes because you notice that all these Ramblers, their above ground square footage and the basement square footage are very similar, right? They're pretty much Rambler boxes, right? Most of them.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times when you're comparing even Ramblers or especially 2 stories, you can have the same square footage on 2 homes next to each other, and the price per square foot may be the same, but an appraiser will take a lot more value. There's a lot more value in above ground square footage than below grade square footage in a basement, even if that basement's finished. So when you're looking at price per square foot, make sure you look at that comparison too, to make sure that your above ground square footage is pretty similar.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, this gives us a really nice range. So then it really just comes down to, you know, condition, how the market is moving, and, you know, what other offers are going in on, you know, on this property, on the property you're looking at. But yeah, this gives you a really nice range. I certainly wouldn't consider this too overpriced. You know, I think the agent priced it fairly well. That's pretty close to where I would price it too, because I mean, it's more on the top end of the market for the value, but in this market, that's what you're going for, right?
Well, it was pretty clean too. It's not like they put the old house that you saw on the previous listing on the market for this price. This is move-in ready for sure, and buyers are going to be willing to pay a little bit more for that. It's new in a lot of ways. So even though your CMA was coming in about 306, Brianna, you're probably around, what were you at, 320?
Yeah, we were at 320.
So it's a little bit higher than the CMA, right? But judging by competition and all the homes that you showed this buyer and what's available, your buyer is also saying, out of all the other homes I've seen, maybe you've even seen some of this price range that aren't fixed up as nice or whatever, they're determining what is of value to them. And so sometimes you've got to go in above what your CMA is, but you don't want to be so far out of line. The most important thing I think we're kind of getting at is you want to be the supplier of information for your clients, because they're not going to get an adequate valuation on Zillow. The Zestimate is going to be way off, high or low, and based on what they see on the market is what they're comparing it to. You're actually looking at data of things that have actually closed and things that have actually done, and that's what they don't have. So when you go over this with your client, you're saying, okay, here's where I came up with. If I was just looking at this as a strict number based on these, and let's say the condition was all the same, because that's why I encourage you to look at the appraisal report. An appraiser is going to give some adjustments, right, based on condition, upgrades, improvements, You know, it had that new roof. It had a lot of new things. Maybe one of those comps that we didn't get through to the pictures didn't have that. So you're going to get a little bit of a bump here and a little bit there. But now you go over that with your client. That being said, they're still going to make a valuation based on getting a house in this market, what they're willing to pay, right?
So Bree, did you ask for any closing costs on that, or is it a 320 offer?
Yeah, they did give us 5,000 in closing cost also.
So they're really netting 315.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty right on, isn't it, Jeff? I mean, that's yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that looks like a great house for your buyer. I bet they're stoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty happy with it.
Does anybody have any questions on what we covered, or?
None.
Does that mean we did a good job, Jeff, or a bad job? I can't remember.
I don't even know if they're still listening. So.
It was good. It was good.
Okay, so going back to those pictures Eric did, this is kind of the same process you're going to go through for your listings as we wrap up, and you guys can ask, you know, any questions or on this topic or others, what you want to talk about in upcoming classes, whatnot. We definitely want that feedback from you because we want these to be as effective as possible on what you're dealing with in the real world. But you remember those pictures Eric was clicking through. When I do my listing appointments, I honestly, and this is just me, I don't do any of this before I go on a listing appointment. I don't show up with comps. I let my client know that I'm there to see what product it is that we're actually going to put on the market, okay? So I'm looking at condition, I'm looking at ways that we can increase the value. Let's say I walked into the house that Eric showed us before that was the one that sold last May, and I walked into that basement and it looked like that, and I knew that all they needed is trim, carpet, and paint. Look at the value that they're going to get in there. So we're going to have that discussion. If I go there with just generalized comps based on square footage, based on garage, based on year built, and we haven't even looked at condition, now we're really not giving them the right information because I don't even know what we're going to be marking. Okay? So for an agent, and this again, I don't go in there and go straight to talk about value and what we can list their house at, and you'll find a line of do. And so when I tell them why I don't do that, and they had just had another agent that showed up with their spiral bound pictures of how great Keller Williams is and their CMA and their comps, and they hadn't even seen the house yet, I'm almost discrediting, without being mean, discrediting what that other agent just did. And as we walk through the house and I'm trying to find all the ways to improve the value of their house, I get a lot of traction that way. So purposely for me, and just a suggestion for you, tell them, hey, I didn't show up with any comps today. So, and again, that relieves them of pressure. They might have a number in their mind, and I always ask them what that is. But I tell them there's no number in mind because I don't even know what you're asking me to sell yet. We could dramatically change the product by fresh paint, maybe countertops, backsplash, professional photos for one. Look at what we see online with iPhone photos and no lighting, like my office. Can you imagine putting a picture online, all these shadows and everything, and not having to be professional? Staging, all those things make it to where they're going to get retail or above. So anyway, that's on the sell side. Just a couple of little notes when you're doing this CMA.
Love that. Yeah, the how you present is so important. You know, just have it staged right, or even if they're using their own furniture, you know, make sure that you have a stager come in and give the proper advice to go through a checklist and clean things up prior to photos, and have a really good photographer in. Makes all the difference in the world of how a house looks and how it presents. And everybody's looking online for their houses now. What is it? 92% of homes are found online. So you better have that first impression beautiful.
Yeah, I tell my sellers, I says, we're looking for exposure. Okay, so Eric, if you like went and did a search for a house in this Spanish Fork, you're gonna scroll through the properties, right? Some are not gonna catch your eye because there's no emotion in the presentation. It might be dirty and cluttery. It might have I mean, the pictures we see are ridiculous. They don't even move stuff off the counter to take the picture. And so when you're scrolling and you're picking 4 or 5 properties to go see with your agent, you're going to pick the top 4 or 5. Even though the bones of your house might be great, the floor plan's awesome, it's got big bedrooms, and it's got great value. If it's not presented properly, it's not gonna get the check mark from those buyers that are looking online, and they're gonna go see the ones that really grabbed them in the presentation from their online view. So that's kind of the goal of the listing, is presentation. And it means more than you know. Well, you guys know, but we see a lot of people that are really just throwing it up there, and they're doing a huge disservice for their clients.
For sure.
I do have a question. Back to the CMA that you guys pulled on online. So if one of your comparables, say, back to the example you guys brought up, if it has a brand new roof, do you go in and get like nitpicky like that and look at every listing and kind of adjust based off the remarks? Or how do you take that into consideration?
I'm not sure I understand the question because you cut out there. When do we look at what on every listing on the pictures?
So the example you brought up, like one of the listings may have a new roof. How do you incorporate that into your CMA? Do you look at the remarks of each listing to kind of see upgrades like that? Or how do you incorporate, like, let's say a new roof on one of the comparables versus, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I made the comment that Brianna's property had a new roof. Those membrane roofs aren't cheap. And if that actually was new, that has some good value because now they got longer life out of it. So when you do an inspection, it might say new. I don't put a lot of weight on the remarks because some agents, they frankly just lie. I go see houses all the time that say, you know, newer roof, newer appliances, you know, new carpet and paint, and it's subjective in their opinion of what they're calling new. Now, if you can tell it's brand new because it's a full remodel, that's also subjective. So that one's kind of tough. Eric, I don't know what you do on that, but agent remarks and what they say about a property isn't always what I see when I go see it. So I don't spend a lot of time on that.
Yeah, I read through it, but yeah, I'm with you on that, especially on a CMA, because it's so hard. We can't actually go inside the property once it's sold.
Right.
But for if it has dates on there, I'll notice that, like a new roof added 2019. Then at least I know how old that roof is, and that certainly has some value. One thing that I always keep in mind too, and I learned this a long time ago from an old broker that said, when a seller say, hey, I just put a new roof on, I just remodeled the kitchen, I put new carpet in, I should get more than what anyone else in the neighborhood is received for a home. When you do a remodel and you bring your house up to standard, you're really bringing your house up to the top standard of that neighborhood. It's bringing it up where it should be. So if you're pulling those comps and they want top value for the comps, then those requirements should be, or those upgrades should be done, if that makes sense. Because you're kind of bringing your house up to where the market is, at the top of that market. So when I see a lot of remodels on the remarks, I'm thinking that might be possibly at the top end of my CMA, and then I'll look at my property based on that too, and see what kind of condition that's in.
That part is super, super tough. And Sydney, as you know, you're a new agent, so you got to get inside and compare these properties, because you're going to see, and I've run into this before, where an appraiser used a comp on the appraisal for another property that my buyer bought, and he compared it apples to apples because of the remarks that said all new flooring, all new paint, new windows, this and that. But yet I had been in that house. It was like a 1960s house, no new trim, They didn't even prep the walls before they painted them. There was holes and there was Mars in the walls. There was no great texture. It was painted over all the blemishes. There was still nail holes all in the wall, and it had nasty old trim with ding marks out of it. But yes, they had painted it. But how different is that from somebody that goes in and puts in all new trim around the doors and the baseboards, and floats out the walls, all the imperfections, and does a professional job? And they both say new carpet and paint. So it's really tough. It depends on if you're talking to your buyer or your seller in presentation and what you can sell and what you're actually buying. But don't put a whole lot of weight on what the agent said to try and get buyers on the house.
And you'll get to where you walk into a house that has beautiful comments and remarks about the house, and you walk in and you say, yeah, new paint, new carpet. They didn't do anything else.
That's it.
Right? They're just trying to fluff it up and turn it.
Yep.
Because the guts of the home is expensive, but it's what buyers don't usually see as easily. You know, your plumbing, your electrical, and the roof, insulation, and all those little things that actually really increase the durability and the longevity and the value of your home, but don't give you that aesthetic pleasing look necessarily. So yeah, and you'll get a feel for that. I think new molding is a huge one, like you mentioned, Jeff. When you walk in, you see new carpet and paint, but it's the original molding from 1962. It really jumps out once you look at a bunch of homes.
It does. And Kim, that goes to your effective year built, right? If you painted the walls on a house, it looks fresh in the pictures and it looks nice, but if you go to the house and it's got what I was talking about in the other example and blemishes on the walls and bad trim, it's not necessarily an upgrade. It's a cosmetic just shine up. And here's a good tip: when you see something that looks remodeled, look at that kind of stuff, because that tells me how thorough they were, right? I want to know if they looked at the wiring. If you're repainting the whole house, all those receptacle plates better be brand new. You know what I mean? If they were really trying to increase value. Another tip is lift up the heat registers. Look in the ducts. If they're full of garbage, not just construction garbage, but stuff that was there before they started the remodel, that tells you that they maybe didn't pay as much attention to putting a good product on the market as appearing to just shine up the shit, if you will, and list it, right? So that's going to make you be a little bit more picky for your buyers. And there's nothing you could do more to bond your relationship with your buyer than point out things that they need to be looking at that they wouldn't have thought of. Then they truly know you're out there, you're looking out for their best interest. And that's where your repeat clients and your referrals come from. You want to separate yourself from that last agent that they used, just wanted to get to the closing table and not offered any advice. Because it happens. I hear it almost every new buyer I get. You're so different. You're so different from my last guy. So protect them and point out these things that you're learning, because it really goes a long way.
Yep, love that. Well, we cruised through that hour, Jeff.
I know.
I was thinking we might wrap up early tonight, but I enjoyed it. It's good information. I appreciate your input, Jeff and Brianna and everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Hope that was helpful.
Yep.
Thank you. Very helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Have a good night.
Hey, thanks so much.
See you tomorrow, Eric.
Okay, for sure.
Try and get some sleep between now and then.
Odds are low.
Odds are low. See you.